beneath the endless, burning vault of the African sky, where the golden tapestry of the Masai Mara rolls toward eternity. The land breathes with an ancient rhythm, a rhythm as old as time itself, as brutal as truth, and as beautiful as faith. Every blade of grass sways in the hot wind like a silent witness to the eternal ballet between predator and prey. Here, life and death share the same horizon, stitched together by survival's merciless thread. The midday sun hangs heavy, spilling molten light across the dust-red veins of safari trails, each one winding deeper into the heart of a world that neither forgives nor forgets. And yet, within this realm of unforgiving rules, something is about to happen that will shatter every certainty, twist every law of nature, and leave the very soul of those who witness it trembling. Imagine the scene. A tourist vehicle sits in hushed suspension, its engine stilled as though even machinery dares not intrude on what is unfolding. Inside, a dozen eyes, wide, unblinking, disbelieving, are fixed on a sight that chills the marrow. There, in the shimmering heat, the king himself, a male lion crowned in a mane of sunlit fire, lies pinned and gasping under the merciless coils of an African rock python. The serpent's muscle-bound rings squeeze tighter with each breath, crushing the lion's chest, silencing his once earth-shaking roars into ragged, failing whispers. Minutes stretch into eternities. The struggle that once shook the dust now stills into a haunting surrender. The lion's eyes, half open, glass over with that faraway acceptance that comes only when the wild has claimed its due. The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. The verse drifts like a prayer over the scene, unseen but felt, and in that moment, the weight of the wild's cold fairness presses heavy on every soul present, they had been told, long before stepping foot into this vast and untamed Eden, that the Masai Mara operates by an ancient, unbreakable covenant, a silent law etched into the dust long before man first walked here. The first and greatest of its commandments: you do not interfere. Tourists are instructed in hushed, reverent tones: observe, photograph, remember, but never touch the balance. The Mara is a living cathedral where every predator's strike and every prey's final breath is part of a sacred design that has played out for millions of years. To meddle is to desecrate that altar. And so, in the safari truck, the group, veterans of many wildlife journeys, some seasoned enough to have seen lions hunt and fail, cheetahs sprint and stumble, vultures descend on the fallen, knew the rule. They had come from America, from Europe, from faraway cities whose skylines glowed against man-made skies, to witness the raw, unfiltered spectacle of the wild. And yet, knowing did not make it easier. Cameras, once poised eagerly, now hung forgotten around necks. Conversation had died into the kind of silence that feels alive, pressing against the eardrums with the heaviness of grief. One woman's hands trembled around her binoculars, though she did not raise them. A man clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to shout or move, knowing both would change nothing. They could only watch as the lion's breaths grew shallow, each one a weaker echo of the last, the python's coils shifting with cruel precision. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. The words might have been scripture, but here they were also law, a law written not in ink but in blood, bone, and dust. Yet, deep in every human heart there is a seed of rebellion against death's cold inevitability. That seed began to stir now in the silent truck, though no one yet dared to water it with action. And then, as if the very air of the Mara decided to change its script, the dust at the fringes of the bush shifted. It was not the quick flicker of a gazelle, nor the wary step of a hyena circling opportunity. No, this was different. Out from the green shadow emerged a figure that did not belong, a shape that the mind at first refused to process. A gorilla. Here, in the Masai Mara, a place it should not be, could not be. Its presence was an impossibility, a living contradiction to the known map of Africa's wild heart. And yet, there it was, its towering silhouette framed by the molten glare, of the afternoon sun, moving with the deliberate gravity of a being that carried both strength and sorrow in equal measure. The tourists froze, their collective breath caught halfway between disbelief and awe. The gorilla's stride was unhurried, its chest broad and steady, a low rumble vibrating from deep within. Its dark eyes fixed on the python-bound lion, and in that gaze, there was no predator's hunger, no rival's challenge. Instead, there was recognition. As if across the great chasm between species, the gorilla saw not a lion, not an apex hunter brought low, but another. Soul on the brink, another heartbeat teetering at the edge of silence. The guide, a man with decades of bush wisdom, could only whisper, "No. This is not possible," his voice a mixture of reverence and confusion. Every instinct in every human present screamed that they were witnessing something rare, something that belonged not to science but to scripture. For a long, breathless moment, the gorilla stood still, the hot wind teasing the edges of its dark fur, the python's coils tightening with mechanical inevitability, the lion's chest rising slower and slower. It was a tableau of life at its most unforgiving, and of something else too. Mercy, unspoken but poised on the edge of action. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. The verse seemed to hum in the silence, as if even the land itself waited to see if this strange, towering figure would obey its ancient call. Then, without warning, the gorilla turned away. No charge, no cry, no heroic clash to break the python's deadly embrace. Just a slow, deliberate pivot, its great shoulders disappearing into the dense green from which it had come. The collective exhale from the safari truck was heavy, part disappointment, part reluctant acceptance. Maybe it had only been curiosity, a fleeting moment when one creature pauses to witness the suffering of another, before returning to the script that nature has always written. The lion lay still, his breath shallow now, each exhalation a ghost of the roar that once shook the plains. The python shifted again, its ancient muscles moving with a patience that felt almost cruel in its efficiency. A woman in the back seat of the truck wiped her eyes, angry at herself for hoping. In the Mara, hope was not a currency you could spend lightly. And then, movement. From the shadowed veil of the thicket, the gorilla emerged once more. But this time, it was not empty-handed. Clutched in its powerful grip was a thick, green tree branch, fresh and unbroken. Stripped of leaves as if prepared for a purpose, it moved with new urgency now, each step driven by something unnameable but unmistakable. The tourists leaned forward, their bodies instinctively pulled toward the moment as if proximity could help them understand it. The gorilla reached the entangled pair and without hesitation raised the branch high. The first strike landed with a sharp, resonant crack against the python's coiled body. The serpent recoiled slightly, its muscles tightening in reflex. The second blow came harder, the third with the force of something more than muscle, something like will. Dust lifted with each strike, the air filling with the dull rhythm of wood against scale. The python writhed, adjusting its coils in confusion, its ancient predator's focus breaking for the first time. The lion's eyes fluttered, a flicker of awareness returning as the crushing pressure around his chest began to ease. The gorilla did not stop. Blow after blow, each one deliberate, precise, relentless, until the python's coils loosened just enough for the lion to gasp a deeper breath. And in that gasp was life. In that gasp was defiance against the unbreakable laws of the wild. Defend the oppressed and take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. In that moment, the gorilla was not bound by the codes of predator and prey. It was bound by something older, the code of compassion written by the Creator himself. Echoing across the hot winds of the Mara, the python, realizing at last that this battle was no longer its own, uncoiled with a reluctant, almost sinister grace, sliding back into the dry grass, its patterned body vanishing like smoke into the folds of the earth. The gorilla stood over the lion now, chest heaving, branch lowered but still firm in its grip, as if ready to strike again should danger return. For a long, impossible moment, the two creatures, kings of realms that never meet, simply looked at each other. The lion's amber eyes, once dulled by suffocation, now flickered with the faintest glint of life. His breaths came deeper, fuller, the rise and fall of his ribcage almost audible in the still air. Slowly, with the dignity only a lion can muster, he rolled to his side, pushing himself up onto his great paws. The gorilla did not move away, it did not retreat. Instead, it took one step closer, lowering its head in a gesture so strange, so utterly unlike anything the tourists or even the grizzled guide had ever seen that it seemed to tear through the veil between instinct and understanding. There was no roar, no chest beating, no show of dominance. There was only presence, a silent acknowledgement between two living souls that had, for a heartbeat in eternity, stood at the same edge of darkness and chosen to pull each other back. The lion turned his gaze toward the horizon, the wind lifting, his mane as if to crown him once more. The gorilla watched him for a final moment, then dropped the branch and, with the same quiet deliberation with which it had arrived, faded back into the thicket, swallowed by the green shadows. No one in the truck spoke, cameras hung forgotten. The only sound was the slow retreat of the lion, his steps steady, each one a living testament to a miracle no one could have predicted. The guide finally broke the silence, his voice almost a whisper. You've just seen the wild break its own rules. And in that heat-soaked stillness, every soul present knew they had been given something that could never be captured in a lens or journal. They had witnessed the impossible. Compassion without reason, mercy without expectation, love without boundary. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and a little child shall lead them. In the heart of the African savanna, for one breathtaking afternoon, the ancient prophecy felt less like poetry, and more like truth. And those who saw it would carry that truth for the rest of their lives, a reminder that even in the most unforgiving corners of creation, grace can still find a way to bloom. The savanna was holding its breath. The sky hung heavy with heat, its golden glare spilling across the vast expanse like molten fire. Yet the air felt strangely cold, the kind of chill that doesn't touch your skin but burrows straight into your bones. Somewhere between the whisper of tall grass and the hush of unseen eyes, a sound broke the silence, sharp, unnatural, and echoing like the ring of a bell in an empty cathedral. The python recoiled, its body a living fortress of muscle and scale, startled by the sudden intrusion. It was no ordinary snake. It was a titan of the undergrowth, a living relic of an older, fiercer earth. The lion, bound in its suffocating coils, felt the crushing pressure deepen, the serpent's instinctive, reflexive final squeeze, one last desperate act of defiance. Somewhere deep in its golden chest, the lion's breath fractured into shallow gasps, its heart hammering in the silent countdown between life and death, and then movement. Towering, deliberate, unstoppable, the gorilla emerged like a force, carved from stone and storm. Its eyes were narrowed, focused, the kind of gaze that could slice through fear and hesitation alike. Every movement was calculated, each step an unspoken promise that it would not allow this life to be taken today. The python hesitated, its cold alien mind processing a new, impossible reality. There was another predator here, one it had not prepared for. Slowly, painfully slowly, it began to loosen its coils. Each unwinding inch was a victory measured, not in seconds, but in heartbeats. The lion's ribs expanded, aching with the taste of air. And then, with a sound like dry leaves being dragged over stone, the serpent slipped back into the dense undergrowth, vanishing into shadows. The lion, free but not whole, collapsed onto the dusty earth, its chest heaving, its eyes no longer glazed with resignation but lit with a faint, stubborn flicker of life. The gorilla did not move closer. It did not reach out, did not claim its triumph. Instead, it lowered itself to the ground beside the wounded predator, a silent sentinel, guarding the fragile edge between survival and surrender. It was not dominance, it was not victory, it was simply presence, and in that sacred stillness the wild itself seemed to pause. The righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. The air between them was heavy, not with threat, but with something older, something far rarer in the natural order. The lion's labored breath slowed, the rise and fall of its chest aligning with the steady, grounded rhythm of the gorilla beside it. Not a word was spoken, not a sound made, but a strange communion was unfolding in the dust. A female tourist, who only minutes before had been sobbing into her scarf, lifted her camera with trembling hands. She did not dare to step closer. She knew instinctively that to break this moment would be to shatter something ancient. Click. The shutter's whisper seemed almost inappropriate here, like speaking in a cathedral. Yet that single act, that frozen frame, would become more than an image. It would become an emblem, a living testament to compassion's defiance against instinct. In the stillness of the savannah, life and death had paused their eternal dance to make room for grace. The gorilla did not look at the woman, nor at the camera. Its eyes remained fixed on the lion, not with pity, not with fear, but with an understanding that required no language. This was not the kind of survival story anyone had come to witness. It was the kind of moment that happens once, disappears into legend, and if you are lucky enough to see it, it changes you forever. Back on the safari vehicle, no one spoke. The tires rolled quietly over the dirt track, but the silence between passengers was electric, charged with something unnameable. Each person carried it differently, some with awe, others with disbelief, but all carried it nonetheless. They had seen something that no biology textbook could diagram, no documentary could stage. They had witnessed a heartbeat that beat not only for itself, but for another. And in that, the wild had whispered its greatest truth. Two are better than one. If either falls down, one can help the other up. The image, when released, would burn across the internet like dry grass in a summer wind. Social media feeds in every corner of the globe carried it. Animal rescue forums, wildlife photography pages, breaking news reports. Hashtags multiplied. Hashtag animal rescue, hashtag wild bond, hashtag viral YouTube story, hashtag touching animal story. It was analyzed in classrooms, dissected in scientific journals, debated in panel discussions. Was it an anomaly? A freak occurrence in an otherwise ruthless food chain? Or was it proof of something we had always suspected but rarely admitted, that empathy might not belong to us alone? Some argued it was nothing more than coincidence, a chain of instinctual reactions colliding in a way that mimicked compassion. But others, millions of others, saw more. They saw a gorilla risking itself for a creature it had no reason to protect. They saw the lion, a predator in its own right, spared by one who owed it nothing. They saw, in one impossible act, the dismantling of our most rigid categories, predator and prey, self and other, man and beast, and in that dismantling a quiet invitation emerged. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. It asked us to look beyond teeth and claws, beyond the hard edges of survival, to imagine that perhaps the wild's most extraordinary truths are not written in the language of dominance, but in the language of grace. The story became more than viral content. It became a mirror. For some, it reflected back the best of what we are capable of. For others, it exposed how far we have drifted from such raw, uncalculated kindness. Scientists spoke of altruism. In primates, of mirror neurons, of evolutionary advantages to cooperative behavior. But for those who had been there, for the woman with the camera, for the silent witnesses in the safari truck, no explanation could capture the feeling in the air that day. It was as if the earth itself had sighed, reminding them that compassion is not the invention of civilization, but the inheritance of life itself. And if such a thing could exist between a gorilla and a lion in the harsh heart of the African wild, then what excuse did we have for denying it in our own lives? In the unguarded moment between the python's retreat and the lion's first breath of freedom, something shifted, not just in the dust and the grass, but in every human heart that would hear this story. And in that shift was a truth both humbling and electrifying. Perhaps, after all, we are not so different. Perhaps the wild is not only a place of survival, but also a place where miracles, quiet, unheralded miracles, still breathe. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, and a little child will lead them.